Welcome back, viewers. MACTFORDEDGE here, and I've had a certain amount of requests for maintenance, okay? Fluid maintenance and associated items with that. So what we're going to do is we're going to cover what I do for my maintenance, okay? And I'll discuss the pros and cons of early and late fluid changes and things like that. But we're going to go ahead and we're going to cover on the fluid changes. And the first thing we want to do, of course, is cover our engine oil, okay? Our engine oil, as far as changing it, when do you change it? Do you go by the oil life monitor? The oil life monitor don't mean much, folks. It is nothing more than a counter. It is not keeping track of how hard you run the engine. It is literally counting down the miles, okay? It doesn't take into account the hours that the engine runs. It is counting the miles. I can prove that with my wife's edge. Her counter is counting down the miles the same as mine does, and they both run different types of hours and everything else. So it is literally counting down that. Now, in the past, in the history, I changed my motor oil. It really demands a change before the 10,000 mile mark. I don't go 10,000 miles as a rule. I have, matter of fact, changed my miles to hours because the 2011 pluses also account for hours. So I'm tracking my hours versus my miles. And for my Ford Edge on this oil change, I'm going 200 hours on the oil. I will do an oil analysis, and that comes out to probably less than 10,000 miles, because keep in mind, we're accounting for engine hours of idle time, and I got probably 10-20 hours a month just in idle time, and of course that is wear on the engine, right? So if you are the standard Edge owner, I would really aim for your oil change at 5,000 to 6,000 miles if you're not going to keep track of your hours. That is the best choice. That is what I did in my 2008. I went 5,000 miles on the oil changes, and that thing had no engine issues, no metals, particulates, or anything at almost 300,000 miles. So if you change it at 5,000 miles, I guarantee you're going to be in good shape as far as your engine. So 5,000 miles is the answer for that. Next thing is your transmission fluid. Transmissions run at different temperatures. Most of you probably will see your transmission fluid temps run between 150 and 200 degrees. Really, you start getting into some other zones of changing your fluid faster, but that if you're towing, for example, rough service, things like that, you're down to 30,000 miles for your transmission fluid change. Folks, severe service, if you read on severe service for your transmission fluid, you'll find 30,000 miles is pretty much what everybody needs to be changing it at. If you go to 150,000 miles on your transmission fluid, you are doing damage. That's all you're doing. So my recommendation is 30,000 if you tow. You might get away with 50,000 if you're normal driving service, but I wouldn't go any higher than that with your transmission fluid, folks. If you want to do that, it's cheaper. 150 bucks for a transmission fluid change, or 3,000 for a new transmission. You make the decision. It's your pocketbook. So for me, I change my transmission fluid out once a year at least. So we're looking at 50-60,000 miles of hard use on the oil, and I am running AMSOIL in mine this time, so I'm sort of experimenting to what we got going on here. But if you're running normal synthetic Mercon LV or V fluid, I would recommend anywhere between 30 and 60,000 miles for your transmission fluid service change based on your driving conditions. If you tow, again, 30,000 miles. Coolant. Coolant, does have some lubrication properties to it in that it's a fluid, and that it does help cool the engine. For me, I change my coolant, since I drive so much, once a year. That's about 60,000 miles. If you've gone 4 to 5 years and haven't changed your coolant, change it, folks. You need to take and change your coolant out, because you're definitely going to start having some issues as far as what you're doing there. So And besides that, with water pumps and all this other stuff, you know, go ahead and change it. So again, I recommend, if you drive like me, 60,000 miles a year, once a year. Otherwise, at 60,000 miles, you should really be changing that fluid. If it's been in there for longer than 4 years and you haven't attained 60,000, change it anyway. Okay, my word of advice on that. Brake fluid. We got our brake fluid here. Really, you should have your brake fluid changed out every year when you do your brake service. Now you say, well, gee, I haven't done it. I don't need new brake pads or anything. Folks, if you want your brakes to work good, you want normal wear, you want even wear, you're going to have your brakes taken in, you're going to have them taken apart, everything cleaned of rust and cleaned up, and all the rust descaled and everything else, and then you'll do a vacuum bleed on your brake system and get all the old fluid out, because the brake fluid is, I think the word is hygroscopic. In other words, it absorbs water. Okay, so why not take that fluid, replace it with fresh fluid. DOT 3 or 4 is what's required for the 2011 plus Ford Edge, DOT 3 for the 2007 through 2010. So you go ahead and you change that fluid out and get your brakes serviced at the same time. You know, key to the point is keep those brakes, tear them apart, clean them up every year. You're going to have good wear and you're not going to have problems. Now, as far as your power steering fluid, again, I drive 60,000 miles a year, so I change my power steering fluid out once a year. 60,000 miles of use. Remember that the power steering for the 2007 through 2010 model years run Mercon V power steering fluid, and so does the 2011 Plus. That is the one caveat where they use the Mercon V. Why they don't go to LV, I don't know. But I use Valvoline Max Life transmission fluid, which is a Mercon VLV fluid. So I've used that on the other one. I used it on this one. No harm, no foul. Everything's working good. So 60,000 miles or after about 3 or 4 years, I do recommend that you change your power steering fluid out. Now, of all these fluids, keep in mind, heat is an enemy, okay? If you were, if you're living in the Middle East or someplace like that where you have high ambient temperatures, decrease the amount of time that you're going to run on your fluids, especially if you're getting really, really hot, because heat breaks down the molecular structure of all the fluids. Therefore, you need to increase the number and frequencies of your fluid changes, okay? So you need to monitor that. If you live out in Iraq and you're driving, or Saudi Arabia, or wherever you're living, and you got, say, 115 degree ambient temperatures outside, I would change my fluids far more often. For example, oil, I would change the oil 3,000 to 5,000 miles. I would change the coolant once a year. And of course, I would also change my transmission fluid once a year, because that is some pretty hot temperatures and you don't want to overheat everything. And of course, you want longevity and therefore less expense. Overall, what we do now in our maintenance amounts to savings later. We don't spend a lot of money. And the idea is we don't have breakdowns, so therefore we maintain all these fluids. So we got our power steering fluid, we changed that. You can do that yourself. We got our coolant taken care of. We got our brake fluid taken care of. And of course, we have any other fluids that I was talking about here. Air filter, when you change that, as you see, I got the filter minder. I will discuss that more in length. But truly, a filter minder will save you hundreds of dollars over the lifetime of your car by installing a $25 device. Batteries, you want to make sure you check your fluid levels on your batteries. If it's a sealed battery, then of course do battery checks on that. And of course, if you live in a high heat environment, your battery will probably die sooner. And especially in cold weather, it will die sooner also. So as a rule, I think your motorcrafts are good for what, 3 years or something. So as a rule, they do fail about right on time. But overall, that is the fluid changes that I do. That is the maintenance that I do to keep my Ford Edge going, just as far as the fluids that I'm using. And of course, use good quality fluids. You don't have to buy Motorcraft. You can buy other brands. I chose to go AMSOIL with this one, and I am converting my other one to AMSOIL just to get the longevity out of it. I'm having good results for miles per gallon and things like that. So I'm going to report to y'all how I'm doing with this AMSOIL and how it affects the engine and everything else. But that is it for a nutshell for as far as our fluids and everything else that we're using. So I hope you found this information good. By all means, go over here to Facebook and of course join that and get online and talk and discuss things with us. And of course join that YouTube channel and of course see these videos far more often. And with that being said, my feet hit the floor today and I'm having a great day, and I want you to have a great day too. And Mercy Girl is going to toss you a couple one-liners and a little bit of this after the video music that I know you all love. Have a great day.
Thank you for watching MACTFORDEDGE videos. Remember to like and subscribe. This is a Mercy Girl production.
Both feet video.